Ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Are we making progress in the effort to improve the quality of U.S. beef? We'll take an in-depth look at the new National Beef Quality Audit, and you'll hear from some of the people involved in collecting these valuable insights.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. Every 5 years, the National Beef Quality Audit brings together a wide range of beef industry stakeholders for a collaborative research and data collection exercise. Funded by the Beef Checkoff, the NBQA gives us a snapshot of the current state of the beef industry, the challenges, and the progress made in an effort to improve beef quality. On today's program, we're going to examine the most recent audit, discuss the findings, and explore what they mean not only to the industry, but also to your own cattle operation. We start in Denver, Colorado, where the latest findings were unveiled at the recent Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. Matt Fleck has more on this important event.
This year marks the release of the 6th National Beef Quality Audit. At the time of the first audit, back in 1991, research indicated that the cattle industry was missing out on an average of more than $450 per head because of beef quality defects.
So the original rationale for the audit was the cattle industry cannot expect improvements in prices for its products or its byproducts when quality doesn't warrant such increases.
Back in the early 90s, some of the complaints we got back from the wholesalers, the retailers, and so forth was that 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 steaks were not tender. They were too tough. Today we don't hear that complaint anymore, and we see our quality grade inching up all the time. And I think that's a very remarkable progress that we've made.
In fact, the new National Beef Quality Audit shows an increase in carcasses that graded choice and prime.
I've had the privilege of working on this, I believe, 3 times. And it always amazes me how much progress we have made. And truly, as I go out through the industry and I buy calves and I get to go watch operations and view things, there's definitely a difference in the country today. The quality of the cattle, the health of the cattle, and just the genetic and management improvements that have been made in the industry.
The data coming out of the 5-year beef quality audit is always real exciting. Just to see where we're at as an industry, what we've made for improvements, and where we still have work to do.
Some of the work yet to do includes greater outreach to consumers to help them understand more about the care producers take in raising cattle and producing beef.
They're concerned about where their food comes from. They're concerned about the safety of our product and would like a traceability system. So that's all good information that we can take back home and know where we need to focus to meet those consumer demands.
We know what we're producing, we know the progress that we made, and also we can see the opportunities that still lie ahead of us to remain competitive in the marketplace. Certainly it's the premium protein product out there, and we want to keep it that way, keep it on the plate.
In Denver, I'm Matt Fleck, reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining me now is one of the lead researchers for the NBQA, Dr. Keith Belk, Professor of Meat Safety and Quality at my alma mater, Colorado State University. Thanks for coming, Dr. Belk.
Good afternoon.
Tell folks a little bit about the history of the beef quality audit.
It's a great question. I think that the audit started with the idea that the industry could improve the things that we do to control quality to a greater extent and therefore reduce the cost associated with producing the product, while at the same time adding satisfaction to the end product that consumers end up resolving. And as a consequence, we could improve demand for product, and that improves value for the entire production chain. The idea came from a guy named W. Edward Deming. W. Edwards Deming was a famous scientist that was shipped to Japan after World War II, and he helped the Japanese basically reestablish their industrial complex, and then came back and helped Ford Motor Company reassess their own internal quality problems. And so the idea was in 1991, a guy named Chuck Lambert, who worked for NCBA at the time, wrote a paper called Lost Opportunities. And from that paper, the idea was to implement W. Edwards Deming's principles into the beef production process to help improve value for cattle producers.
Successful for Japan, and I think successful for the beef industry, right?
Absolutely. I think we've made some substantial progress since then.
So tell us about the goal of the NBQA.
The goal is to do exactly like that. One of W. Edward Deming's main statements was that you can't manage what you don't measure. And so the idea behind the National Beef Quality Audit is every 5 years we sort of measure where we are relative to beef quality, and now we measure what is beef quality and what does that mean to the customers of the product. And then that allows the industry to do things to help improve that perception so that we can add value back to the chain. And so to this day, it's a value-adding concept for beef production.
So tell our viewers a little bit about how you've seen this quality audit change over the years.
Well, it's changed significantly since 1991 when the first audit was conducted. We identified at that point in time things like fatness and blood splash and things that today would still be a problem when they're associated with beef. But those, as cattle producers have made progress in addressing some of those things, they've actually expanded the scope of the things that we need to address relative to the audit. And so today, things like food safety enter into the equation. Food safety was never mentioned in 1991 as a quality issue that we needed to address from the production level of the industry. And so over time, the sophistication of how we measure things in the audit and the ability to add scope to the audit has both helped the industry learn more about where we're at and also add value to the beef products we sell.
One of the things we want to do with this show is to help our viewers understand just how robust this process is in terms of the audit, and perhaps you could talk about one of the components, which is the in-depth in-person interviews.
Oh, absolutely. So phase one, we manage that at CSU at Colorado State University. The idea behind the phase one portion of the audit is to go out and interview the sectors of the industry past cattle production that are responsible really for selling our products. And so we interview people like retail grocery retail grocery store chains that buy our products and then sell them directly to consumers. Food service, restaurant operators. We operate in all of those sectors of the industry. And the idea is to try and find out what those people that are buying your products think about the products that they're buying. And over the years, we've improved the sophistication of how we do that. And so we can actually quantify the degree that different customers for our products are satisfied with product quality now, what they're concerned with, and now we can even ask the question, would you be willing to pay more for something if we could produce this in the beef supply chain?
So I'm curious, what were some of the key findings from that phase one research?
Well, there's several things that are going to be released. This is obviously a huge database, but a couple things that are really important, I think, is firstly, food safety is by far and away today the most important trait that is expected at all levels of the beef industry. And so we have to take food safety very seriously. Secondly, there's a greater number of branded beef programs being marketed. We think that in part that's because we're doing a better job of competing and differentiating different brands into different niche markets. But we also think that that's one of the mechanisms that's being used to handle inconsistency and increasingly larger cattle. So we have this increased carcass weight issue that you'll hear about later that is, it's something that the industry is having to figure out how to deal with, and so we're addressing with that, I think, partially with branded beef programs. Thirdly, customers are willing to pay more for characteristics that add quality in their eyes to the product. More of the customers than we audited in 2011 are willing to pay for more.
That's great.
Unfortunately, they're not willing to pay as much more for it, but more customers are willing to pay for quality. Tenderness and flavor are still the primary issues of interest to most of our customers, and so we have to make sure that we don't lose that in our beef production system. In terms of things that the industry thought were good things that we're doing, eating quality is still, they think, what sells beef. And so we need to make sure as an industry that we maintain the importance and not lose sight of how important eating quality is for beef. On the negative side, where there's opportunities for improvement, a couple things come into play. Number one, we're not doing as good a job as we should in helping our customers understand that as producers, we've implemented beef quality assurance practices on our operations. That's an opportunity to market product and help customers and their consumers understand that, you know, we do care and we're doing things to help improve the product consistently and constantly across the production chain. So we need to do more to market BQA.
Okay.
Secondly, we need to do more to engage consumers in how we produce products. It's a big issue. You know, we're literally fighting a war out there on those that would prefer that we not do what we do. Right. And to overcome that, we've got to help the general public understand how, why, what, how is beef cattle produced. And I think that in the next 5 years, you're going to see a lot of efforts towards that goal. So.
That's fantastic. Boy, you've really whet our appetite, and I appreciate the insight you've shared so far on this new NBQA. Now, we're going to dig much deeper into this important topic throughout our program today. But if you want to see all the resources produced on the NBQA, visit bqa.org. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll continue our discussion on the National Beef Quality Audit and the research processes that went into making this important project. Plus, we'll introduce you to the chairman of the Beef Quality Assurance Advisory Board, and we'll visit his operation in Pennsylvania. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you know all you need to about working cattle? Did you know there are proven methods that can reduce stress for the animals, for you, and for your crew? Learn from the experts who can help sharpen your stockmanship and stewardship skills. By attending a stockmanship and stewardship event, you'll learn proven ways to work cattle more efficiently, skills that can help put more money in your pocket. Find out more and locate a training session near you at the website stockmanshipandstewardship.org.
Want more profit out of your pasture? Then here's our 2 cents on using parasite control to make some dollars. In a trial of calves, Long Range outperformed Sidectin and Safeguard dewormers combined by as much as an extra 40 pounds. Yeah, that's a lot of extra profit, and that's why it pays to treat cattle with Long Range. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter. Not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment. You can't afford another season without Long Range.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, as we discuss the National Beef Quality Audit and the findings of the most recent report. The chairman of the Beef Quality Assurance Advisory Board is not just a professor of animal sciences at Penn State, he's a cattle producer as well. Brian Baxter takes us to Pennsylvania for a closer look at Dan Niffen and his family operation.
Depending on the day, you might find Dan Niffen moving bulls on the Penn State University campus, working with students in a lab, or meeting with the head of the animal science department. Or you might find him checking on the purebred Hereford cows and calves on his home place.
Actually, Windy Butte is a family operation. My wife and I own this enterprise. The cattle side of it is something I've been extremely passionate about ever since I was extremely young. And boy, some of my fondest memories are working with my dad and working cattle and talking about cattle and learning about cattle.
In fact, Dan has devoted his career to cattle and the beef industry, both on Windy Butte Ranch and in the academic world. As the current chair of the Beef Quality Assurance Advisory Board, he helped oversee the latest update of the National Beef Quality Audit.
You know, there's a bunch of good news that's come out of this year's audit. When we compare back all the way to the 1991 audit and look at the advancements we've made, look at the improvements we've made, we've had continual improvements over the life of the audits, and we've had that data and information to establish that we are moving forward. But the other part that's good about it is it establishes those marks, those benchmarks that we need to look at to be able to make those improvements. You know, the interesting thing about the audit is it gives us the facts and figures when we're ready to start talking to the American consumer. and now the global consumer. And it gives us that data and information that is a sound science base that then we can talk about the quality of the product that we've produced, the wholesomeness of the product we've produced. And BQA gives us that basis to be able to tell that story truthfully.
Dan says improving beef quality should be a priority for every producer and every sector of the beef production chain, and he says the investment in the audit by producers themselves is important for the future success of the U.S. beef industry.
As somebody who personally invests in the beef checkoff program, I think investment-wise for my dollars, that is a huge investment for us. And it's something that we as an industry need to continue to document as we move forward. If we don't keep setting those benchmarks so that we've got some targets, we've got some objectives as we move forward, then we are probably going to start moving in the wrong direction. And if we can meet consumer demand, then ultimately it will come back and reward the beef industry in continued consumption.
And continued beef consumption is the key to profitability for all beef producers, including Dan Kniffen. In Pennsylvania, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining us now is another of the lead researchers for the NBQA, Dr. Jeff Savell, professor of meat science at Texas A&M University. Dr. Savell, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you.
You know, earlier in the show, we talked a little bit about the in-person interviews, and I know you were involved with the plant research. Tell us a little bit about the in-plant research and why that's so important to NBQA.
Well, one of the things we've done historically with the National Beef Quality Audit is actually going into plants around the country, and we did the same thing this time. All the collaborators were virtually visited every plant, every large-scale plant across the country to collect information, harvest floor, coolers, transportation, all kinds of things.
Sure.
And so it's a great source of information for us to use.
So you mentioned harvest floor, but my understanding is that included everything from transportation to a new component, mobility and harvest floor. Tell our viewers a little bit about what goes in that assessment.
Well, one of the things our research team did was look at transportation. You know, where did the cattle come from, how far they were transported, how much room did they have on the trucks and trailers to be able to transport them and such. One of the things we found is we were around about 12 square feet for the average per animal there, which is probably a little low for the larger cattle we have today. So it may be something the industry wants to work on to make sure that we're not putting too many cattle on a trailer that could impact their comfort or bruising and things like that. We added mobility this time, which was new, to get really a baseline assessment of how mobile the cattle were as they arrived at the plant. And we were very impressed that the numbers were extremely high, that had virtually no mobility problems. And that's something that at least from now, we've got a good baseline information that can be used in the future to look at that kind of assessment.
And so tell us a little bit more about the actual cooler assessment you did, and what did you learn there?
So on the cooler assessment, we looked at 9,000 carcasses, and we had assistance from USDA meat grading supervisors to help collect that information, so we have official USDA grades that we can use. And one of the things, I think, one of the good news for the beef industry is the percent prime and choice was up, and so it was about 72% of the carcasses that qualified in that. Probably know everybody should probably know by now that carcass weights are up, and so we were about average of 860 pounds, and so that's a trend that we've seen over all these years.
Sure.
But everything else looked very good for the carcasses on that.
You mentioned choice and quality grading carcasses, and I know one thing that a lot of producers have asked is the overall efficacy and accuracy of instrument grading. What did you learn about that?
Well, we had another phase of this where we looked at the information from instrument grading, which is used by a lot of the major packers today. And they shared information with us, and we actually had 4.5 million carcass observations with complete information that we could take homogenized, so we took the information away of where they came from and such and just used that for averages. And that was a huge percentage of the number of cattle that were processed in 2016. Okay. And the amazing thing is how comparable that information is compared to the in-plant information that the USDA grader assisted us in doing. In fact, is extremely close. The marbling score is virtually dead on. And so it gives us great comfort that we know that, you know, the in-plant with the grader and what they're predicting and what the machine, the instruments are predicting are virtually the same thing. And I think cattle producers should be happy that those systems are in check with each other.
Absolutely, that's great news. And one other question for you, what value do you see as we compare what we've learned this year from previous studies?
You know, the National Beef Quality Audit, we do it about every 5 years. And the nice thing about that, over this 25-year time period since it started, you have a roadmap of where you've been and where you're headed. And you have a chance to really look at places where the improvements have been made, and also opportunities where adjustments or other kinds of things may need to be done by producers to be able to improve the quality of the beef that they produce.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your continued leadership in this effort. Still to come, we'll hear what cattle producers at the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting think about the results of the National Beef Quality Audit. Don't go away. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hello everybody, Stormy Warren here from SiriusXM's The Highway. Join me at the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show in Phoenix, Arizona. Come explore over 6 acres of displays from more than 350 companies during the best cattle industry trade show. Plus, you can have some fun with my friend comedian Bill Engvall at our exclusive Cowboy Comedy Club. So blaze a trail to Phoenix, January 31st to February 2nd. Find out more at beefusa.org.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor will do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
Welcome back. Today, we're focusing on the National Beef Quality Audit and what this important study means for the industry. The findings of the latest audit were introduced at the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting in Denver, Colorado. Let's toss it over to Russell Nemitz, who has reactions from producers who attended the session. Russell?
Well, Kevin, we just heard the latest results from the most recent National Beef Quality Audit, and I'm telling you what, the data is exciting to say the least. And we're also hearing from cattlemen and cattlewomen about what they think about the latest data results. And with us is one of those producers from Missouri, Greg Buckman, and you're the incoming president of the Missouri Cattlemen's Association. And Greg, as we mentioned, the National Beef Quality Audit data is now out. What'd you think about it?
I thought it was very, very interesting. It showed that the general public is still looking to ID our cattle. The calves that are born on my farm and my neighbor's farm, they want to know where they came from and how they got to their plate. And that was one of the more interesting things I thought in the audit, as well as the similarities between the in-plant grading system and electronic grading system were so dead on. I could not believe that they were within a 0.1% accurate.
Absolutely. So why is information like this so important still for not only producers, but really the end user out there, the guy and gal that we're all trying to serve, the consumer?
Well, there's only 1 or 2% of us raising the food for the other 98%. We want our share of the food dollar, the grocery dollar, and they're only going to buy that product from us when they feel comfortable about it and know that we've done everything we can within our power to make that the best meal they're going to have tomorrow.
And how does this all play into, let's say, the next 5 years having information like this at our fingertips now?
Well, we can make management decisions. It's showing definitely the genetic improvements we've made in our herds, the BQA training that we all are getting now to take better care of our cattle, transport them better. Just the little things that you wouldn't maybe think would make that big a difference, but when you see it on a $4.5 million head survey, it sure shows up what we can do better.
Absolutely. Well, we sure appreciate you taking a little bit of time for us and giving us your thoughts on the most recent National Beef Quality Audit results.
Thank you. You guys do a great job.
Well, we appreciate that. And for more information, Kevin, about the National Beef Quality Audit and the data we've been talking about, of course, folks can always visit bqa.org. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Here now with more on this important study is another of the lead researchers, Dr. Deb Van Overbeck, Assistant Dean for Academic Programs and Professor of Meat Science at Oklahoma State University. And I understand you're also on the BQA Advisory Committee,
Correct.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Thanks for coming and sharing some of your insights with us.
My pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about the strategy portion of this project. Tell us who was involved and what was the work that you all did as a strategy team?
So the strategy workshop is what we've commonly known as phase 3 of the audit, and it really brings together all our industry players. So producers, packers, retail, food service, government agencies, as well as members of the BQA Advisory Board to look at results of phase 1 and phase 2 and to figure out what's that blueprint or what's that plan and the guide for the next 5 years for beef producers.
So tell us, what were some of the positives or some of the strengths that you identified?
You know, one of the biggest strengths is just looking historically since 1991 and that 25 years that we've been doing the audit is that we've made a lot of improvements in a lot of areas. There's obviously places that we can still improve, but one of those big things that we've made some improvement in, even in the last 5 years, is in quality grade and the lost opportunity from quality grade and meeting that goal for the industry, and we've made improvement in that simply 5 years ago and from in the 25-year spectrum.
That's great news, and as always, there's always room for improvement. What were some of those areas that you identified in this year's study?
So one of the things we do try to do in that strategy workshop is to identify what are the main strategies or goals that we can have, what are those areas for focused improvement. And so this year we identified as a group 3 target areas that we can look at, and those are food safety and animal health, eating satisfaction and reducing variability in product, and then optimizing value and reducing waste. And there's obviously some tactics that go along with those. Some of those are just increasing communication and those types of things. But those are our big 3 target areas that we're going to look at for the next 5 years.
And that's what I was going to ask you. How does this group collaborate on really figuring out, okay, these are areas we need to improve. Now, what are the strategies and tactics that we can implement to actually make progress?
Absolutely. When we look at phase 1 and phase 2 and try to summarize that, you heard Dr. Belk talk about earlier some of the things from phase 1, and one of them being communication and the lack of understanding about beef quality assurance, for example. So one of those key tactics is to increase communication among sectors and between sectors, from producer to end user, and even to consumer to, for example, understand what beef quality assurance is, and getting that buy-in from a producer level of figuring out what is the reward for implementing and practicing beef quality assurance, for example. So if we do that and open up those lines of communication, we also have clearer market signals to producers on what we need to produce.
Yeah. Well, it sure sounds like we've made some progress, but as always, there's still gains that can be made. Thank you so much for coming and sharing those insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to read the entire study for yourself, you can find the complete summary online at bqa.org. Still ahead, we'll have more reaction from cattle producers to this important study and discuss how it impacts the Beef Quality Assurance Program. Stay with us.
Out here, we're hostile, cold, and cruel. Our way of life. There's no better way to live. Guts, glory, ram.
Forward. It's more than a direction. It's mandatory. Because the beef business rewards the progressive, the doers, the ones who know what it takes to go easy on cattle and never set them back. So set your eyes on the horizon, turn your back to the wind, and move your herd the only way you know. Forward. Vista Vaccines. Always ahead.
You're watching NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen on RFD TV.
Welcome back. We're discussing the findings from the National Beef Quality Assurance Audit, and what it means to the industry. We asked Dan Niffen, chairman of the Beef Quality Assurance Advisory Board, for his thoughts on some areas of interest that could use additional study.
And some of the things that turned up in the audit this time that really raised my interest is, for example, the transportation issue. You know, and we've started to look at more cattle that are showing up with more bruises. Yes, the bruises are a lot better controlled, but the question I have is that happening during transportation? Is it happening during loading? Is there something going on at the facilities where we're starting to pick up some more minor bruising on these cattle? That's something we need to delve into. The other part is, you know, there is always need for continued research, whether it be on things like tenderness, that we continue to work with the genetics that will help us improve tenderness. But when it's all said and done, we also can't close the door on injection sites. You know, that's one of those issues that, given some new technology, I've got some serious concerns that injection sites may begin to increase in frequency again. And as a producer, I am extremely concerned about that.
And here in the studio with us now is Jesse Fulton, the Associate Director of Producer Education for NCBA. So Jesse, tell us, what does this audit mean to the producers back home?
So the National Beef Quality Audit serves as an industry-wide scorecard, shows us where we are as an industry and where we need to go. Producers can take that information and see our shortcomings and our lost opportunities and use that information, take it back to their operation and help further improve our great industry.
We've talked about a lot of issues today, but for the folks that are sitting watching this show, what are one or two action steps you think they could take back home?
You know, two areas that could use improvement would be bruising. Now, in 2011, from the 2011 audit, we've had less severe bruises. However, we are observing more bruises on carcasses, and this could be from facility design, the use of sorting tools or handling tools, and also in transportation. So we just need to be cognizant of that and pay attention to what we're doing, how we're handling these cattle. Another area, I know Dr. Van Overbeck talked about how we have increased or had better quality of beef. However, we still have a lot of yield grade 4s and 5s. Ways producers can improve that is participating in maybe an extension-based program where some of their calves that they're selling are combined with other producers' calves, and they can receive carcass data back on that. Only way a producer can, you know, improve based on carcasses is to receive back that information.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about the importance of communication and telling our story. How can the Beef Quality Audit help us do a better job of that?
So in every audit, we usually relate back to the previous audit's information. And from that, producers can show where we were and how we've improved. And so they can relate that to the consumers, like whenever we see a problem, we know to fix it.
We have you on the show a lot talking about BQA. How does beef quality assurance factor into all this discussion we've been having today?
Right, so from the audit, those lost opportunities and shortcomings, the BQA team will focus in on those and produce education materials in order to help improve that, and we pass it on to the producers.
Now, we've talked a lot about BQA on the show, as I said, but one thing that people may or may not know about the new modules that you've developed to make getting your BQA even easier than before, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. So our new modules, we launched those back in February at our convention. We already have over 10,000 registered users in that program, so it's really excelling with those new modules. They can go to bqa.org, just click the Get Certified link and become BQA certified immediately.
Very simple. Jesse, thank you so much for coming to the show and for all the leadership you provide to the Beef Quality Assurance Program.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
When we return, we'll wrap up our discussion on the National Beef Quality Audit and its impact on the beef industry. And later, we'll check in with Baxter Black. Stay with us.
Well, I think a rancher has to be a steward of the land. There's nobody else that can take care of land better than a rancher. When we switched over to the Purina products, it was a step in the right direction.
The difference we see in the cattle is the consistency of their nutrition.
The cattle hold their condition a lot better throughout the whole year.
It does make a difference that we can see, day in and day out.
Blaze a trail to Phoenix, Arizona and the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. It's the cattle industry's biggest convention with education, networking, and fun. Plus, you can check out the huge NCBA trade show, outstanding entertainment, and more. Don't miss the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show in Phoenix, January 31st through February 2nd. Visit beefusa.org for more.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we wrap up our look at the latest National Beef Quality Audit, funded through the Beef Checkoff Program. Let's check in once again with Russell Nemitz, who has more from the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting in Denver. Russell?
Well, Kevin, with the most recent data just out from the National Beef Quality Audit, we're continuing to grab industry reaction today, and we're lucky enough to have Ed Greiman from Iowa, an operator from north central part of Iowa. And Ed, you just heard the presentation. What did you think about the most recent data results from the National Beef Quality Audit?
Well, the good news about what we've got is that we continue to show improvement. And I would say the reason we continue to show improvement in everything that we do is because of these audits. All of us are at home every day doing our thing in production agriculture, raising cattle as efficient as we can. But the one thing that we don't get to see is that link between us and the consumer. And what this really does, these audits, is it connects it together. And so every few years I get to sit in there and see, what changes do I need to make? Are we having issues with animal handling, bruising, quality, tenderness, anything like that, condemnation. And so that's why it's so important, because that connection at times is broken, and we get that right now with this.
Was there any surprises in there or anything that you said, wow, I didn't know that was going to come about and make you a better producer?
There was a little bit. I was a little concerned to see that we've seen more bruising, but it was good to hear that. I think part of it is that the industry is more conscientious of the bruises, and so maybe we're catching more of them. And there's no doubt in my mind that we'll get it all fixed. The thing that I like to see is that we've increased our quality grade. I think we have a consumer that really likes our product because of the flavor, and quality grade is that, and I think the industry has really responded to them. We've got a few little things to work on. We're getting a little fat. We've got to pull the fat off. And we've got some cut size issues, but I think the industry will work through that. But we've got to continue to do these audits because I think they're a good reminder to us of what we need to focus on.
And how important is it to have this data now at our fingertips to help us all become better at what you just said, especially in the next 5 years?
Well, that's exactly right. And if you saw where they'd been to do these audits, it was pretty much every packing plant that I do business with. And so they're getting a wide range. We're all getting involved in it. So we're getting to see all the different areas of production. And I think we continue to learn from them, and we'll always learn from them. And so now the next question is what does the next audit need to look at? Is there a change in focus? Because the consumer is always changing what they want, and maybe we're changing the way that we produce cattle. So now maybe the audit needs to start to take the next step. Is what's the next question? And that's what I was up doing there, asking questions of the panel.
Well, we appreciate that, and we also appreciate you being with us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
You bet. I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Ed Greiman from Iowa, just one of the many participants that got to hear the exciting data from the most recent National Beef Quality Audit. And of course, for folks who want to learn more, it's pretty easy, Kevin. All they have to do is visit bqa.org. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
And joining us once again are some of the lead researchers for the National Beef Quality Audit. As we conclude, Dr. Belk, I would ask you, based on the results of the audit, how would you assess the current state of our industry?
I think that cattlemen are doing a fantastic job. I think that they're still part of a noble industry and they're making impact on society. We have learned, I think, during this audit that perhaps there's some opportunities to improve our communication chain, perhaps our value determining chain, and how products are valued up and down the supply chain better. Currently, there's producers that are not fully seeing the things that their customers are saying are quality opportunities, both good and bad. Mm-hmm. And so somehow we have to do a better job of communicating what the consumers and their customers say back up the production chain.
And Dr. Sable, what would you say are a couple of the key takeaways?
Well, I think the findings show that there's some improvements been made in many of the traits that are measured, and I think that's great news. And as always, there are opportunities for things that the beef industry needs to continue to work on. And so I think that those are some of the things that I see that are the benefits of the audit, is finding things are working, things that need improvement.
And what would you add in terms of key takeaways?
I think it sends a message of the importance and the value of beef quality assurance. If you think about the things that were initiated in the BQA program early on and how that's impacted the issues that we saw in the audit in 1991 and how those have kind of dwindled away some respect, but now the importance to communicate what we're doing with beef quality assurance through the entire industry segment in that value system is important.
As we talk about communication, Jesse, what would you say would be some of the key take-home messages to folks watching at home?
You know, Kevin, I would just like to remind the producers at home that the National Beef Quality Audit is 100% funded by the Beef Checkoff. That's why checkoff dollars are so important for the research that we do in the industry. I think Dr. Belk would be the best one to answer why the audit's so important to us.
Well, I think as we move forward, if we're truly to implement Dr. Deming's philosophies of measuring what we want to improve, I think this is something we just have to keep doing. And I think every 5-year frequency is a really good frequency to do it, but it is so important to measure the things that we want to improve if we want to maintain and improve our market share.
I know this is a huge effort, and I just want to thank all of you together with everyone on your team who's been so instrumental in conducting this audit again, and of course the checkoff for funding this very, very important project. Thank you all. Now don't forget, if you want to read the summary of the National Beef Quality Audit for yourself or watch the entire presentation from the summer business meeting, you can find those things online at bqa.org. Don't go away. We'll be back with our good friend Baxter Black right after this.
Stay Tough fence will last 3 times longer and is 4 times stronger than low tensile fencing. High tensile wire, solid vertical stays, and tight fixed knots all provide superior strength. You will use fewer posts, saving time, labor, and money. Protect your investment for generations with Stay Tough fence. Stay strong, stay tight, stay tough.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Grazon Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
If you're allergic to Progress, I'll catch you later. How important is it for your vaccine, medicine, and pour-on to be accurately administered? I mean, does a 376-pounder get the same medicine as a 400-pounder behind him? And how about your pour-on? Cows can easily differ 100 pounds. Tapari has a pistol grip that automatically calculates the specific doses. It's amazing. You betcha. Squeeze chute required. Check it out. Tapari.com. We know you're up before the dawn, because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
"Just count me out," said Wilford, as he lay there in the dirt, a shoeing rasp behind his ear, a hoof print on his shirt. "I'll handle this," said Freddie. "You just get out of the way. This sorry bag of buzzard bait has met his match today." Freddie grabbed a set of nippers and bent to grab a hoof. When he woke up, his shoeing chaps were dangling from the roof. His shirt tail hung in tatters, and his watch had come unwound, and the nipper's orbit finally peaked. They clattered to the ground. "Go get a twitch," said Freddie. "I'm about to clean his clock." He tied a rope around his neck and fished it past the hock and pulled back on the sideline to instill a little fear when Pig Eye bit a good-sized chunk from Wilford's offside ear. Wilford tangled in the sideline and tried to navigate whilst dragging round the horse corral like alligator bait. Freddie tried to stop this trolling with a loop around the head. And it might have worked if Freddie'd only roped the horse instead. Go get the boss's Humvee. We'll winch him to a post. They got the cayuse necked up tight and set to work, almost, because the halter broke and Pig Eye walked the length of Freddie's back. They rolled beneath the axle like two lovers in a sack. Freddie heard the sound of gunfire, like 1,000 amplifiers. I got the sucker pinned down, Fred. I shot out all the tires. It was dark when Wilford stood up and laid his hammer down. The gross of crooked horseshoe nails were scattered all around. Wilford couldn't move his elbow, but he grinned and proudly said, "Oh, Pard, we done a good day's work to what was left of Fred." Freddie crawled out of the wreckage and staggered to one knee. What say we wait till morning to put on the other three? This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. We always appreciate your additions to our show. Want to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen or catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all of our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from around the country. It's also another chance to see Baxter Black. So check us out at youtube.com/Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We're back right after this.
I'm an NCBA member because NCBA, they look at the facts, they look at the history, and they look what's good for the industry.
It's important to be NCBA members just because of what NCBA does. They keep us informed about a lot of things that are going on nationwide.
The reason we're an NCBA member is we think that it's the best voice that the cattle people have.
Join NCBA today. Head to beefusa.org or call 866-USA-BEEF.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Hey everybody, I'm Stormy Warren from SiriusXM's The Highway. Join me for the 2018 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show in Phoenix, January 31st through February 2nd. You can find out more at beefusa.org.
The new data is out regarding the National Beef Quality Audit, and the results are exciting, to say the least, for the U.S. beef cattle industry. And it's been fun to catch up with cattlemen and cattlewomen from across this great country of ours for their industry reaction. And we're continuing to do exactly that with this segment. We have Ashley Coles from Hutchinson, Minnesota, and she's with the Minnesota Beef Quality Assurance Program. The results are out. Ashley, talk about what you heard from this presentation and why it's so exciting.
So a lot of the data that we heard this morning was focused around the BQA best management practices and how cattlemen have come a long ways over the years. And every time they release the data from a new beef quality audit, you're seeing more and more of the BQA best management practices being implemented, and you're seeing a return back to our producers based on some of this data. So we're excited that the BQA program is effective, it's relevant, and that we continue to see producers increasing their implementation of BQA BMPs.
Absolutely, and how important is it to still connect the whole industry from the food producer to the consumer with programs like the BQA and data from the National Beef Quality Audit?
Sure. So the BQA best management practices are the gold standard for how beef producers should operate. And so it also provides us a platform with a great story to tell the consumers that these are our gold standard practices and these are what producers are doing. And so it's transparency to the consumer about what's actually happening in beef production.
And it kind of gives us a roadmap for the next 5 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it sets the tone for what producers need to strive for continuous improvement within BQA, BMPs, and the beef industry. So we're excited for the next 5 years and setting that stage for what beef producers should be doing as we go forward.
And obviously, BQA, Beef Quality Assurance, is very near and dear to your heart. You know, after sitting through a presentation like this, is it another call to action for cattlemen and cattlewomen to get more involved with the BQA program in their own home states?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a BQA coordinator, you know, hearing the data of where we've come and where we need to go, it's kind of invigorating for me as a BQA coordinator in our state. So I'm excited to go back to Minnesota and help share the message and the data that we heard this morning and kind of give marching orders what we need to do in our state to increase some BQA BMPs and just increase beef quality in our state.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, there you go, Kevin. You heard it yourself from Ashley Coles, the Minnesota Beef Quality Assurance Program Director there back home. We need more and more cattlemen and cattlewomen to get involved with the BQA. And if they want to do that, or if they want to find out more information about the latest results from this National Beef Quality Audit, it's pretty easy. Just visit bqa.org. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
As we wrap up our program, I'd like to remind you that with consumers today wanting to know more about their food, the National Beef Quality Audit is an important tool for the industry to continue building demand for our product. You can read a summary of the latest audit at the BQA website, plus take a look at past audits. While you're there, also check out the new interactive online classroom and begin your training to earn BQA certification. Just visit bqa.org for all the details. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what's happening with NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, you can find us on Facebook. Be sure to like our page and we'll keep you updated with photos, details on upcoming shows, and much, much more. Well, that's our time for this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.